What are we going to talk about today?
I don't know. What do you have in mind?
Well, the only thing that I've got in mind is I was asked by Alma Lee of Logos, who's sort of admin, does the heading up of Southern Africa for Logos, for Moya Chalubi. Okay, and she said they want to start producing a newsletter. Would I write something? Just short, you see. So you know, you got to think now, where do I start? I mean, there's just so much one can write about, but it's a newsletter, so you don't want to particularly become. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you what I wrote. Okay, it's half a page. It's about less than 300 words, or less than half a page. And maybe we can talk about that to start with.
Sure.
How's that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Okay. So, what is the opposite of hell on earth? Was my heading. We are here now in this incarnation to discover the riddle of life as it is written in The Secret of Life by Moya Chalubi. Our first step is to become a seeker, where we start to unshackle ourselves from the continuous cycle of reincarnations. We have been forever trapped inside a cage where lies our treadmill in the physical universe and on earth. This, for sure, is hell. The first step towards heaven is to stop being a prisoner of this world and ego self. Start by breaking free of animal mass consciousness. Stop trying to change your circumstances and other people, and then you are on the path to leaving the holographic bubble of the physical universe while you are on earth today. We are ready to become a seeker after achieving this evolutionary state. So we need to be aware of the positive and negative mental forces that pull us back into our caged-in, age-old cycles and prevent us from taking that first step in evolving out of hell. The positive and negative forces within us need to be balanced to become part of the Spirit of God's neuter force. We need to work with both the positive and negative energies. In fact, karma ensures this balance. Once we have achieved this first step, we then focus our awareness on the Spirit of God to lead us in our endeavors, and by not trying to manipulate our physical circumstances. It is not like making instant coffee, but rather like hand-making bread. It is a process where you will experience the taste once the baking process is complete. That's the end.
It's funny, you talk about the baking process. I was listening to a book, as you know I do on my drive to and from work, and they were talking about, the spiritual process cooking you.
Okay.
And people who, after a period of time, the term they used was fully cooked.
Yeah. Interesting. Yes. Because while I was writing it, I don't know what comes to mind to you, but particularly at the end where I sort of sat back and started thinking about what I had written, was that we need to work. We need to work with both the positive and the negative, not try and make our life more positive, okay, or more negative, okay, and we need to get the positive and negative and just take it as it comes, okay, and keep a neutral effect in each moment of the day. That way is going to lead us to the books we need to read, perhaps the people we perhaps need to meet, or those aha moments that we get, and that's the bottom line, okay. And we've gone through many thousands of years, millions of years, I guess, probably, of incarnations. Okay, and in each incarnation we've evolved to some degree. We don't know. We can't look back and actually see. But everything in the physical universe, okay, in this three-dimensional universe, cosmos, okay, is duality, okay, is good and bad, positive and evil, white and black, okay, it is, okay, and you can't step away from that, okay, other than by balancing that white and black, okay, and it's really quite simple. It's for, my thoughts anyway were, what you and I have been talking about and doing for a long period of time is that we're not trying to react to either the positive or the negative things in our lives, okay? We just accept them, okay? And are grateful for them, because we're here to learn, and so everything's a learning process. So yeah. What are your thoughts?
I think you might be onto something there, but seeing that you're in the sharing mode, I will share with you an email I wrote to a friend I haven't spoken to for quite a long time, actually. And she just sort of sent me a short email and just basically sort of said, I sent through some other stuff that had just turned up randomly in my inbox, and I just sort of said, here's this thing, turned up randomly, thought you might be interested. And she just wrote back and said, so how are you and how are things? And it's sort of like, well, that's a good question. How am I and how are things? So I'll read you what I wrote to her.
Yeah, great.
So I said, hey, Ruth, honestly, it's a curious time. I'm not sure what other word fits. The COVID experience was intense. That tiny virus had a huge expression. I was questioning depths of self that I was previously unaware. It's still lingering, and so are some of the questions. Bubbles of sadness have come from deep places. At least they have surfaced and released. I can't say what the sadness was even about, just raw and unfiltered. But it hasn't only been sadness, it has been the whole spectrum. The sadness maybe took me by surprise more so. It's been silly little things and unexpected. I listen to audiobooks in the car to and from work, really because I don't like the radio. A guy by the name of Trent Dalton wrote a lovely little book about love stories, literally a series of love stories he collected from strangers when he set up a camp table and chair in King George Square in Brisbane. He had a handwritten sign, "Tell me your love story." Many made me cry. Not just a few welling tears, but cry like I haven't for a long time. Got quite a few sideways glances in the traffic, but hey. Same with another book about a forest monk's life journey. Lots of books, actually. Those stories and their authenticity, the raw honesty, the heart, the truth. Looking deeply within, it reminds me of the need to be entirely engaged with this unfolding, all of it. It reminds me to be as expressed as that little virus, but hopefully in not such a painful way to those around me. It reminds me to be unrelenting in my quest for the truth. It reminds me to be true to me, not just the Don who dwells on the surface, but that guy at the depths, maybe even more so to him. Walk up to spiritual paradoxes, like feeling alone at times, yet at the same time feeling at one with all of creation. I guess as the old passes away and the new buds and flowers, accepting the impermanence, yielding to the love, the grace, and being truly open for whatever turns up each day. Looking at each day with fresh eyes and seeing what truly is. It also reminds me about my daily journey, being more mindful, more aware, more grateful, those ever-present gifts, the sunrises, the gardens, the wagging tail, the tasty soup, working with my hands in the workshop, making a meal in the kitchen, in bed after the day, the blanket shielding the cold, a Kelpie girl curled up tight. Those other things, though, were like blowflies in the kitchen. Workers wanting me to take on more responsibility again. I agreed, somewhat reluctantly, to manage a few shifts, but they want more. The mob, and in brackets, thinking unruly kangaroos down the back paddock, close bracket, that I work with are crawling over each other, behaving badly and just being dicks. I don't have much energy or time for this nonsense, but I guess like most tests, they tend to be a little more demanding than eating toast and Vegemite. Same with the general rudeness of customers. There seems to be a lot of anger within the community, and for the life of me, I'm having trouble to see what all that anger is about. I look inwards at my potpourri, but really don't feel the need to have that expressed as anger outwardly. I'm at a loss to understand. Maybe it's fear-based, I'm not sure. But a day doesn't go by these days without some angry person wanting to have a go. It doesn't get through. I just wonder what on earth is going on in our community. But anyway, I approach each day anew. I try to be the best me. But those things I don't like, I know that they will pass. So how are you?
Okay, very interesting letter. Yeah, very interesting letter.
There's a lot of similarities with what you've just written, actually.
Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah, but a little bit more in detail, I guess. Yeah, yeah.
Because it does raise that fundamental question, doesn't it? Like, why are we even interested in spiritual life? Why? Can't I just ignore it? Which comes back to your heaven and hell on earth analogy.
Yeah.
You choose.
Yeah. But it's still, you can rephrase the question, okay, rather than why look at spiritual life. Why not just get on with the life in this holographic circumstances now, regardless whether you see it as spiritual or physical or it is all the same. Okay, it is hell, it is heaven, it is spiritual. Okay, and so your objective is just not to react. Okay, is to what gets dealt you play it. Okay,
that's so true.
And then you don't try and put an intent out there to, get a better job or whatever it is.
Well, to take that high ground, isn't it? I think I told you previously about that they call themselves the Noosa Temple of Satan. And like the incredible reactions that they get from all quarters, like threats to come and burn down buildings and lectures about repent and redeem, and but the people who are providing all of this valuable advice are doing it in such an aggressive, threatening manner.
That's right.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
Come to the love of God, otherwise we will kill you.
Yes. Yeah. It's what I say to mosquitoes when they irritate me. I said, "Come a bit closer, and I'll send you to God." Yeah.
That was a big request of you, really, wasn't it? Like, I mean, how do you? Was there any sort of guidance as to what they were looking for at all? Or?
No, I actually, when they sent me a telegram, I said, "Sure, I'll do it, but I mean, what do you want me to do?" Okay, and they said, "No, we just leave it to you." Said, "Say hello to your South African friends." That was the, and so I thought, okay, well, I think that's probably an appropriate answer that she gave me. So let me see where I land up. Okay. And
are you happy with it?
Yes, I am. Yeah, I took a few days, probably 3 or 4 days before I started. I thought, well, let me see what comes to me. Let me see, I just need a starting point, and then somewhere not actually relevant, but I don't know whether I passed it on my research or something, but the word "secret of life" came across, and I thought, okay. And I think it was in the food eating. I think it was, I was researching plant-based foods for a class, and I think it was their "Secret of Life" or something. So, and then I thought, what is the secret of life? How can people use that and talk about plants, okay, or plants that you're going to eat? And then that got me thinking, and so yeah, I then went back. I told you the only books I ever brought to Australia with me were my Logos books, okay, and having been spurred on with this title, I went to look for that book, because then I knew I had the book, and I knew Moya had written it, and I found it, and I thought, okay, now I get this on a research. Now I find the book very easily. Let me put it down and let me write. I glanced at the book to remind me what was being said, and I knew the context of what he was moving, because he started off the book with right from the beginning, the creation. Okay, that everything started with absolute nothingness. Okay, and then everything was evolved through, let's say, positive and negative. Okay, this is before the physical universe was created. Okay, and it was a process of a pendulum swinging one way and a pendulum swinging. It's the only way one can analyze it and create an analogy. And Moya uses this: the pendulum swinging one way and pendulum swinging the other way, and you could call that negative and positive. And then that out of that, Muntu was born, and then Muntu evolved and basically kept on getting this balance between the two. And the more he balanced the two, the more he evolved, and so did creation with him. Okay, and so landing up, even in heaven, okay, there is still those energies. Okay, they're just called different things. Okay, now in our books and stuff like that. But in essence, they're still positive and negative. Okay, and the heaven state is the absolute balance. That's why, in my opinion, you can have heaven on earth, is if you balance those two. Okay, rather than trying to strive for your perception of heaven. Okay, or for those that want more materialistic or satanic pleasures, it's rather bring those together, and that, because that's how things are. There is still an enormous amount of absolute nothingness. Okay, and even in my classes where I'm researching astronomy and listening to what the Hubble telescope and all the other telescopes, the Meerkat telescopes in South Africa, and there's some here in Australia too, they go so far. I mean, the new pictures are the equivalent of, let's say, 1 with 26 noughts behind it, and those are kilometers away from us in the exoplanets, past, and there's just between there and us mostly is absolute nothingness. Okay, because the universes are sort of clustered together with their planets and their suns and things like that, like us and our Milky Way and all the rest. We all clustered together, and then there's a gap before you get like to a next universe. Okay? So rather going off at a tangent here, but so my thoughts from writing that and just scanning that Moya Chaluba book, The Secret of Life, was the beginning, scanning the beginning of it, because what I really wrote about was probably at the end of his book. Okay, but the beginning was this whole creation, which I didn't touch on in that short little article, and it made me like feel contented. I thought back, and because it made me remember, Don, about the fall of soul from the heavenly realms, okay, and right down to, the Big Bang was created and the physical universe was created. But once you've left, let's call it the heavenly realms, okay, the heavenly state of balance, okay, you come down, and now you are immersed. And as I said in the article, you're actually encaged. Okay, you're encaged in this bubble. Okay, this holographic bubble, and part of that holographic bubble is your subconscious, and then below that is the mental. Okay, and below that is the feeling and the astral. Okay, and then below that is this Earth planet that we're in. So all of that is part of this illusion or this holographic experience that we are in. And so we now know through, God's clearness, okay, is that all we have to do is allow what comes to be absolutely put together and balanced, not to mentally or even subconsciously try and impregnate the process. Okay, because the subconscious falls into it as well. And so what's in the subconscious? I don't know, we've put things in the subconscious. Our experiences, our reincarnations from millions of times before are in the subconscious. Okay, and so the subconscious plays games perhaps with the mental. Okay. So the games start rolling. Hey, you can have a better life, you know. Come on now, let's create some vision boards, and let's now get the mental to work for you and visualize and attract those things. Okay. And you know what? You do attract them. Okay. But you've just created more karma, because karma is the balancing act. The karma's got to give you a wallop in the opposite direction. Maybe this incarnation, maybe not. Okay. Because you went out at a tangent, focusing on what you thought was positive and great and a great life for yourself and so on. Okay. And it doesn't matter if your storyboard was spiritual. You know, maybe you had a picture of Jesus Christ, you know, in his third day after rising or something, a lovely image. I'm not talking about that horrific cross. Okay, maybe you look at that and you think, wow, okay, or you've got a picture of Buddha or you know, Vishnu or whatever. Okay, and so it meant a lot to me to be given that article to write.
Absolutely.
And it's made an enormous difference. And from the first night, or the first day that I wrote it, which was, I don't know now, what's it, about 3 nights or 4 nights ago, I've slept well. Okay. Now I find that interesting for myself. Okay, because I haven't been sleeping well for a long, long time. Okay, yeah. Anyway, so that's my take on it. And I think
it's interesting when you sort of look at some of those ideas, like, you know, the creation. You know, that people sort of see it as an event back then, but my sense of it is it's something that's just continuously happening. You know, there's the rising and the falling, you know, through that process. And there's some parts of creation which might do that in, you know, minute fractions of a second. And there'll be other parts of the creation that will do that rise and fall process in probably billions and billions of years. But there is that rise and fall, you know.
Absolutely, I agree with you totally. You can call it birth and death. Okay. And because one can understand here on this the birth and death and the rise and fall, and the same is happening with the this third dimension cosmic physical duality world. Okay. Okay, because it was created, and Armageddon will come, and it will become absolute nothingness again. Okay, because it's the two. The absolute nothingness was there first, and then it was, whatever word you want to use, born to become that particular holographic substance, and then it'll go again. Okay, and you're quite right that the rise and the fall. Okay, the birth and the death, the coming and the going. Okay.
But the interesting
cause and effect.
Yeah, that's right. And the interesting thing through all of that, though, is that there's this falsehood that sort of, you know, through the birth and the dying, that there's a beginning and an end. You know, I mean, that's the lie, because there's the constant. You know, the silence and the stillness is the constant, which has no beginning and has no end. You know, so it's the core truth that underpins everything, isn't it? You know, so
yeah. And I think different people, I quite like the word constant, because I think then you don't start getting envisage, you know, some religious words that come in there. There is a constant, okay, and yeah, there is a constant, and that constant arrived as at the beginning of that book, The Secret of Life Now. But, you know, there was absolutely nothing before.
Which is an idea that's probably impossible for us to fully comprehend.
We can't. No, we can't. In my mind, absolutely can't. Okay. To me, it just means there's a hell of a something that out there that I cannot comprehend.
It's like when people ask scientists the question is, what's on the other side of the edge of the universe? Nothing. Yeah. Well, what do you mean nothing? There's got to be something there. No, there's nothing there.
Yeah, and nothing is that concept that humans have. Okay, they must accept that nothing is something.
Okay. Well, it is true, you know, because I mean, when you think back, well, you know, like you research back and even to, you know, like the history of numbers, you know, zero didn't exist for a long time. Zero was a late arrival on the scene in respect to numbers.
Okay.
You know, it was always one was the start. You know, and the idea of something being zero was just completely foreign to people.
Yeah.
How can there be nothing? You know.
Yeah.
There's always something.
Yeah. And there always will be something, even if there's nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah. I was researching a class last week on the Mayan civilization. Okay. And of course, one of the things that came up, which would be obvious, is the Mayan calendar. Okay? Yeah. And of course, that brought back thoughts of 2012, where the press, you know, sort of made a meal of it and said the world was going to end. The Mayan calendar, and it went back 5,100 years or something, and I at that stage in 2012, I sort of just accepted and took in whatever was going around at that time. But earlier this month, when I researched it, I found it very interesting that 5,100 odd years that ended in 2012, okay, was just one cycle in the Mayan calendar. Okay, and they have 13 cycles of the same length. Okay, and that originated, or with its first documented proof, is about 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. Okay, but that's only where we can find evidence. Okay, so that doesn't mean that's when it started. But you can, now that we understand the calendar, one can go back and say, well, now 2012, was that the end of the first cycle, or the third or the fourth or the fifth? You know, and does it form a circle? So is the last cycle going to be next to the first cycle again? The coming and the going, the birth, the death and the birth. Okay, the up and the down. Okay. So there was definitely something incredibly knowledgeable. I say it because it's just so interesting that we talk like this. But maybe you and I were talking like this, 5,100 years ago. Yeah. Interesting.
Because one of the paradoxes for people, quite frankly, I think, probably not only in the age in which we live, but probably all time, has been, okay, well, if I accept that, then what do I do now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's an absolutely good, intelligent question. Okay. So, yeah, what do you do now? You just consciously balance whatever comes at you in your life. Okay. And accept whatever comes at you in your life. Okay. Because if you don't, you're going to create karma, and you're going to come back again and again and again and again.
And in a sort of a short-term practical sense, you'll create disease, and you'll create discomfort and suffering and all of those things.
Yeah, as well as pleasure and ecstasy and all the lovely things. Okay. Yes, both of them, both sides. Okay. And yet we need to do nothing to answer that question. Okay. Not proactively do anything that will change our lives. I mean, we've got to proactively, if we got a job, then we go to the work. Okay, we do the work as best as we can, and we keep our moral standards high, and whatever we're doing, and we move forward until something else, and we have to make a decision, and that's where the balancing comes in. Okay, why are you making that decision? Answer the question why, and
be honest with yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And don't influence other people, and don't let other people influence you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Listen, take in the knowledge and the love and whatever they have. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, it's a fascinating thing, isn't it?
What is a fascinating thing? Life? Yes, life is a fascinating thing. Okay. And I think we've been struggling with concepts for as long as you and I have been talking together. For many years. And I get we've got to where we've got to because we had those discussions. Okay. And because we read the books that we have read, okay, but we don't now worship the books or worship the content, or try and change our life because of the knowledge that we have. Okay. Maybe it just keeps on reinforcing from all these different angles that we read and listen to come to the same point, and that is balance.
Yeah, and I think that's such a powerful phrase, isn't it? Because all too often, it's characterized as a journey, and but it's not a journey to anywhere.
No. And we know that we're caged in, and we know we can't get out of that cage by clicking a finger or
putting a picture on a vision board.
Yeah, we're not going to get it, but we're going to get out of that cage, out of the cycle of reincarnation through balancing positive and negative circumstances that we experience, and we're constantly being given these opportunities to balance.
Yeah. And a big part of doing that is just acceptance of the spectrum,
Yes.
of the ecstasy through to the agony, that it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. Acceptance.
Mm.
Great, powerful word. Yeah, and gratitude for whether it's the left side or the right side, gratitude for the opportunity to be able to have something to balance. Yeah.
Okay. Which is the fine tuning, isn't it? To bring it back into balance.
Yeah.
Maintain that balance.
Yes. Yeah.
So do you get a sense then, now that there's been a request for a newsletter, that Moya is going to become a little more, out, more public, or?
I find that a very good question, Don, because I've thought it a lot over the years. Okay, and I think not, probably, and that's contrary to what all the other logists feel. Okay, and even to what Moya says. Each year that comes, it's like, this is the year we got to go out there and so on, and I have no doubt in my mind that he does, in actual fact. Okay. And when I was living in South Africa and attending his meetings over many years, okay, he would say that he's busy working on creation, okay, and then he would come to a point after a few years, that aspect is now finished. 5 minutes, that it was 45 minutes before. Okay.
But the bizarre thing was that when it dropped out, and I went back and looked at your profile, it said last seen 32 minutes ago. So I don't know what's going on. So that's not true. It was like 2 seconds ago. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, you're in the middle of a sentence, a very important sentence.
Yeah, now I'm not sure quite when you froze, because I tend to glance away and look out the window when I talk.
Well, you were talking about when you're in South Africa and you used to go to the meetings.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you asked me a question. I was responding to, can you remember what the question was?
About whether you thought that, Moya might become a bit more publicly visible.
Yes, yeah. Okay. I have no doubt in my mind at all that all his activity is in another dimension. Okay.
Yeah.
And that he has to be here in this dimension in order to be creative in the other dimensions.
Okay.
Yeah. And almost like it was originally when he was in absolute nothingness in this particular dimension. And so I think that what is going to happen is that the world, and this is my speculation, this is not Moya, let's just make that clear. But my looking at it is that obviously, because he's so powerful in every single dimension and sub-dimensions, okay, through the three-dimensional cosmos, and as well as the spiritual realms, all the way up into however many planes, 60 odd planes, perhaps, I don't know how many there are nowadays. And I think he's there in some form or other, like he is here in the physical, in a form. Okay. He will be in the dual dimension in a form. He'll be in the subconscious in a form, and so forth. Okay. And so I think that he is looking after the the Earth planet, okay, and but he by forming a right now a sort of worldwide logos religion, let's call it, would serve no purpose, okay, because a cycle has to happen. The karma has to happen, okay. He can interfere with karma, okay, but then he's got to see the benefit of that, okay. Otherwise he's wasting his time, okay. So I think that once let's just call it, for the sake of sort of clarity, let's call it, once the Third World War has come and gone, okay, and there's been a collapse, or maybe the Earth has changed because of climate change and some disasters, or whatever it is, okay. Once all that settles down, and everybody that is left is at a sort of same level, okay. They're all looking to food and grow some food and survive, and there's no more outer space rockets and and machinery and guns and so forth. Whatever's going to happen, okay. I think that is the time where Logos will say, now at this level we bring all people together, okay. And so yeah, whether he does something smaller in the meantime, I don't think so, because I've offered, from the day I met him, or the year that I met him, a long time ago, more than 10 years ago, I was saying, let me market it, let me go to social media and talk about it, and he said, no, no. Okay, if you want to talk about it, go talk about it in the streets. Okay, don't start putting stuff on that. And he's always said no to me. And then I was head of a number of committees from time to time, and as soon as we get in momentum, he dissolves that committee. Okay, so yeah. I guess he doesn't want something to happen, whatever it is, okay, and he doesn't want, also, without a doubt, the satanic forces to get a hold of the works of Logos as well, okay, until Logos is powerful enough, or the satanic forces are weak enough not to be able to influence the whole process. But that's my take on it.
And it makes a lot of sense, particularly when you think about, as you say, the focus of the work isn't necessarily in this dimension, it's elsewhere, so. Without
a doubt, I think it is. That, I mean, I think it's in every dimension, including this one. But this one is like, if one can use the term, the bottom of the pile, okay?
But doesn't that add a lot of, like, context and focus around the ideas of faith and hope and those sorts of things too, doesn't it? Just because you can't see something happening around you doesn't mean that someone's not doing the hard yards, so.
Yeah, that's why we've had these religions to start getting things like hope and faith, and obedience to
and trust
and trust and so on. So it's been a process, and we've been part of those incarnations maybe over the last, certainly in the Christian era, perhaps the last 2,000 years. But then before that, there were the Hindus before that, and there was always somebody before that, and so and that was just conditioning humanity, educating humanity. Okay, Moses went out there, before Jesus, to just try and get people to be humane to one another. So but it took hundreds of years. Okay, and probably failed, but that was the purpose. Okay, so it's and we still what Moya calls, we're still in the first day of that up and down, of that dawning and darkness. Okay, so everything is relative if we look at time. Okay, it's so a few thousand years to educate humanity, or to bring them around from barbarians to what they are now.
And as you say, it still sounds like there's a lot to be done. So.
Well, you can just look around. Okay, there is a lot to be done. I mean, we can see what's happening in Russia and the Ukraine. Okay, we can see who America is supporting. We can see China moving out. We can see there's a lot still to happen, and it might be quick because somebody decides to strike the match where there's lots and lots of inflammable fumes or flammable fumes, and and then there'll be one hell of an explosion. And then,
well, there's lots of big statements being made, isn't there? Like China's making some very big statements, and Russia's been making lots of big statements. I guess the US has been making lots of big statements. So there's very powerful forces all seem to be on a collision course, don't they? So.
Yes, they do. And one of the interesting things from my observation of those statements is that a lot of them seem to be made by the satanic forces against each other. Okay, so that is interesting because that could bring down or weaken those forces. Okay, and that could result in a war. Okay, and that would be interesting. That could be the way that finally we get some sort of balance in this world, is through the satanic becoming weaker. Okay, because it's just far too strong at the moment. There's an imbalance. Okay, and so the constant has to bring it back. The karma of the planet, of the people, of the nations, of the individuals within those nations, have to be brought back. Okay, karma does that. Okay, that constant does that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
irresistibly.
Yeah.